Hey guys, Nary here from Drakewing Gaming. So if you know me on Twitter, the Gaming Dragon. As you can see, I am back at you with another Let's Play episode of Lyre, version 1.14. So, I'm not sure what's new in this version. I think it's got like a new chapter and such. I keep thinking it's spelling something out in a way that very well might be another language. That just always caught my eye. It looked like it was like a message or something. But anyway, guys, please sit back and enjoy. Let me entertain you for the next 20 minutes, and let's jump right in. And the last place we left off, you know, Lord Luvun is still trapped in the cell after having quite the experience with a god. That was crazy. But anyway, we're right back into it, so here we go. Alright. I'm back in the cell. My head is leaning against the wall and my body is sprawled out on the stone bench. My body feels completely exhausted, but not in a sleepy way. Was I dreaming? Oop. I lift myself up slightly and look out the window. The sun's rays are still being cast over the mountain like a golden crown. Time didn't pass. Even if I only slept a wink, the light from the sun shouldn't be visible at all. So it was real. Either that or I'm crazy. Can I really see into the past? It would make sense considering everything that's happened. That vision that I had where I was looking through Rainer's eyes, it was too real. Does this mean I could do it again? See back in time and figure out who killed him? I can't see how it would help me, though. Not like anyone would believe me. I take the ring off my finger and fiddle with it in my hands, sliding it on and off, watching it gleam in the moonlight. Focusing on the objects helps me think. I see another object gleam in the light. It's a shimmering object stuck in one of the piles of straw, like it's being hidden. Walking over to it, I reach in and pull out a small shard of glass. No, it's a piece of a mirror, about as big as a spearhead. Maybe someone was going to use it as a weapon. I lift it up to my face and try to look into it to see a reflection. Yep. Nice. I think this is probably the first time. I think this is the first time we've gotten a really good look at him. The shard is scratched to hell. There's not a very clear image. My face is slightly warped in the reflection, but I can make out everything. My hair is a bit disheveled, and I look like I haven't slept in 2 days. Something does strike me as odd. I swear my eyes were green. Huh. Now that I get a closer look, they're blue. An extremely bright and vibrant blue, almost like diamonds. They were green before, I swear they were. Suddenly I think back to what Tigran said a few minutes ago. You finally removed your mask. Maybe there's a correlation to my eyes changing color in those visions. A side effect of some sort. I placed the mirror shard deeper into the straw pile I got it from, making sure nobody would be able to see it. I've still got the ring in my hand and walk back over to the bench, sitting down on it with my back to the window. Huh. Ooh, I love this art. I feel stuck. Like everything that has happened so far has led me here, and now I can't do anything. My only hope is to try and see the past. I've done it before. I know I have. This isn't a trick, and I need to start believing it. Even if nobody believes me, I can try to figure out evidence. Proof that can be used against the killer. Even so, I can have some solace in knowing who the killer is before I'm executed. A tremble shoots up my body as I think about being walked to the chopping block. That won't happen. I'll find a way. And I'll have Lyall to help me along the way. Live by one's wits. Oh man, he's a handsome dude. Who is that? At first, it sounds like Tigran is speaking to me, but they don't sound like that. The voice is muffled and twisted, as if someone were to grab the words and wring them out like a rag. And yet, they feel familiar, like I've heard them before. Live by one's wits. Advice, maybe? Another past memory sent to torture my mind with riddles is more likely. Makes me almost wish I didn't have this skill. I shake my head slightly and focus on the ring again. I need to play this smart. I can't go around acting like a fool anymore. This is the forest and I'm the fox being burned out of its den. My only hope is to find another way out, another way to tunnel out. And I'm going to need help from those I trust. Chapter 8, Day 23. Lyall's eyes feel heavy as he steadily wakes up. Another night of restless sleep. As he shifts his leg around underneath the warm covers, cold air flows under them, sending a fresh feeling up his body. His feet are cold and he brings his legs closer to himself. Oh, poor Lyall! The heat from his body should be enough to keep him warm, not to mention his fur. However, it feels like the cold has been getting worse. He hugs one of his pillows tightly to keep his body warm. The feeling of warmth that is usually carried with him has been diminished these past few days. The rest of his senses have finally started to kick in, and a strong sensation begins to overtake him. It's a scent. Luvun. He's noticed that every time he shifts around in his bed, Luvun's scent invades his senses. It's been a few days since their intimacy, yet his smell still lingers. It's not a bad smell by all means. Luvun usually smelled so nice. The scent isn't artificial either. It gives off a natural feeling. Thinking about Luvun causes a flood of recent memories to flow through his mind. For the past couple of days, every time he wakes up, he feels as if each memory smacks him in the face all over again, reminding him about everything that's happened with no remorse. It feels almost unbelievable, and sometimes he'll wake up in the morning, and as he's still coming to, he'll feel a moment of pure bliss and hope that it was all just a nightmare. Oh, don't you make the puppers cry! It wasn't a nightmare, though. If only it was. His eyes are starting to swell up with tears, and he doesn't know if they're watering from waking up, or if it's because of sorrow. To be honest, most of his worries come from thinking about Luvun. He feels awful knowing that he wasn't able to go and visit Luvun yesterday. Lately, the whole castle's been in an uproar, and he's barely had the chance to sit down. He knows that Luvun is strong, but he just can't bear the thought of him being thrown down there. Luvun is definitely being fed, but it's still a terrible place to be, and he doesn't deserve it. Sometimes he wishes that he could take his place and be the one who was thrown in a cell. He cares for Luvun an awful lot, but somehow that doesn't feel like it has anything to do with his notion. He wholeheartedly believes that Luvun was not the one who did it. Knowing this makes a sense of justice swell up inside of him. He cannot allow such a form of injustice to happen. He'll do anything that he can to help Luvun, not just because of love, but because of loyalty. Lyall adjusts himself to get up from bed, and the scent invades his nose once more. It's almost intoxicating and reminds him of all the fond memories he's made so far. With his free paw, he traces his finger from his groin, across his navel and up to his abdomen. That night when Luvun was inside of him was the closest he had ever been with anyone, both physically and emotionally. He had never truly felt such strong feelings like those until now. He's sure of it. Never has he been so connected with someone who truly understands him. The bed beneath him creaks as he slides his legs off the end and swings them down onto the ground. His padded feet brush the cold floor and send a shiver up his spine as a chilly draft blows over his naked body. This doesn't worry him too much, though, because knowing that the air will eventually warm up as the day marches on. Carefully, Lyall stands up and stretches his legs by walking around, giving his body a chance to fully wake up. He only slept for about 3 hours, instead of the usual 4 or 5. He feels refreshed, though, and that's all that matters. It's always the short rests that feel the longest. He takes a few steps around his bed and looks out the window. Crisp snow is piled up on the sill, and the morning sun shimmers through the top of it like crystals. The room has a dull and cozy glow to it, which contrasts the colorful morning sky outside. Lyall swiftly walks to the other side of his room near the door and puts on a long cotton coat. Lifting the coat up and sliding his arms into the sleeves allows him to get a whiff of his own body. Not a terrible smell, but he could definitely use a bath. The last one he took was the quick one he had right before everything fell apart. He'd like to visit Luvun later and wouldn't want to smell unclean. He'll also have to attend Prince Adrius' coronation. That's supposed to happen sometime this morning, so he should have time afterwards. Lyall then takes a pair of his underwear and slides them on, along with a pair of thick trousers. Taking another look around his room, he notices that everything is still the way it was that night. The fire is out and the bed sheets are disheveled, but everything is still in its place. Even the ballroom clothes that were thrown on the ground in a pile are still bundled up on the floor against the bed. It's like a memory frozen in time. Gathering up a few things, he made a motion for the door before noticing something. There's a piece of parchment face down on the ground that's been slid under the door. He bends over and picks it up, flipping it over to read it. Lyall, meet me in my study after the coronation. I need to talk to you about something in private, please. Leif. Why? Whatever it is, he hopes it isn't more bad news. He walks over to his dresser and unlocks the top drawer, throwing the letter inside. Whatever he wants to talk about most likely has nothing to do with what's going on, but this letter gives off a feeling of urgency. He'll most likely have to visit him before seeing Luvun. Not only that, but he still has to work. He has work to do everywhere else, along with figuring out how to save Luvun from being strung up by his neck. He shakes this horrible thought out of his mind as he goes for the door. He takes a few steps out into the hall and looks left and right, hoping that nobody is coming. The entire corridor is empty as he strides in the direction of the stairs leading to the bathing room. He's clothed, of course, but he would rather be alone with his thoughts right now. The private bath next to his room is ideal, but right now he'd rather use the one near Luvun's room. It's comfortable and people rarely use it. Most things in the guest wing are usually better quality. It's honestly a good thing the coronation is today. Everyone in the castle is probably getting ready or already outside of the throne room. Even the staff is most likely prepping for some posh thing afterwards. Lyall wouldn't really know. He's never been to a coronation. The cold yet fresh air wafts onto his face as he emerges from the inner halls. Weather around this time of year is cold enough to chap his nose badly. He brings his paws up to his snout and breathes into them as he walks down each twist and turn of the hall. Right as he's coming up to the bathing room door, he spots Luvun's room down the hall. The door is still propped open. They're probably still conducting a search of the place. He would have been a part of it, but they asked him not to intervene since he was so close with Luvun. He was a bit offended by it, but tried not to let it bother him. Swiftly, he slips into the bathroom, escaping the cold. His padded feet immediately touch the damp floor, and he has to stop himself from slipping as he steps through the doorway. The room echoes as the door shuts behind him with a soft thud. Everything smells the way it usually does, and the room is cast in a glow of colorful light from the windows above. The white marble shines even brighter because of it. Walking over to the levers, he pulls on the ones he usually uses. He pulls the water one all the way down, and then takes the one that says oils and pulls it down just a little bit, along with pulling the soap lever down, of course. He watches as the water begins to funnel out of the faucets at the top. The scent of coconuts and natural plant aromas invades his senses as the water splashes to the bottom of the already damp pool. He begins to take off his clothes and sets them on the bench nearest the door. Nobody's here right now, so there's no need to go to the changing room. Gently, he steps into the tub and lowers himself into the hot water. It's a relaxing feeling that envelops his whole body. He dunks his head under the water and scrubs with his paws all around his fluff. He brings his head up from underneath the water and imagines that he now looks like a wet mop. He shakes his head a bit, splattering water everywhere and slightly drying his head fur. After that, he lays back against the wall of the pool and lets the water rush around him. This environment allows him to truly think, at least as long as nobody bothers him. After a few moments of sitting there in the pool of water, he realizes something. Even though he has the determination to do it, how is he going to help Luvun? He's no detective. Damn it! He begins to slowly scrub himself down, cleaning himself thoroughly. Going around and asking questions would certainly help, but who would he start with? He contemplates for a moment before remembering something. The dagger that was found at the scene of the crime has intrigued him ever since he first laid eyes on it. It looked like an ordinary dagger at first glance, but something seemed off about it. Unique in a way. He has to figure that out sooner or later. Where did that dagger come from? Maybe he would figure out who was the owner. Idan. Idan would be the first person to talk to. He supplies the best weapons in the village and is a master of his craft. He's made weapons for the highest nobles around, including being the one who crafted Rainer's sword. He should know at least something. Lyall rises a bit from the water with a feeling of triumph now that he has a clearer goal in mind. He'll clear Luvun's name. He has to. He finishes cleaning himself and gets out of the bath. His fur is now sleek and shines a rich brown color in the morning light. Water drips off of his body and onto the slippery floor, creating small puddles around him. He walks over to the levers and resets them, allowing the water to stop and the pool to drain. Walking over to the bench, he takes a dry towel off of the clean pile and begins to lightly dry his fur, but not too much. He doesn't want to get rid of the oils in his fur that help keep it shiny and smooth. Once he's done patting himself down in the towel, he places it in the basket and broadens his stance. He then proceeds to shake his body, mostly his head, almost like how a dog would when they are wet. Water flings off of him, creating a thick mist cloud, and his fur fluffs up for a moment, before laying back down on his body. He wouldn't dream of doing something like that in front of someone. He usually tends to keep his canine tendencies to himself and refrains from acting in such a way in front of people. After that little bit of theatrics, he dresses himself, the dry clothes sticking to his damp body, and then he leaves through the door. After laying down and allowing himself to fully dry off, Lyall rises from his bed and begins to get ready for the ceremony. It's best if he arrives a little bit early. Looking at one of the mirrors on his wall, he runs his paw through his fur. As untamable as it is, he'd like for his fur to look as decent as possible. After tidying up his fur, he walks over to his armor stand. His ceremonial armor is loosely thrown onto it from the night before. He takes the full-body suit and slides it up his legs and around his torso, sliding his arms into the sleeves. It's warm and lined with leather on the inside. He then takes the breastplate, gorge it, and the connected pauldrons and puts them on. He's gotten a lot better at putting his armor on by himself over the years. It's a relatively easy set of armor to put on, considering it's mostly meant to be ornamental. The armor that he would wear in actual combat is somewhere in a trunk, and that's very hard to put on. It would be easier with two people, maybe a squire, but Lyall refused having a squire when the opportunity was given to him. He doesn't entirely need the help, and he has no wisdom to offer yet. He just has to accept that he would be wasting their time. Rainer wasn't upset about it, though. He rarely ever got too upset about things. Locking the last bracer onto his wrist, he stands in the mirror and looks himself over. This armor may look a bit ridiculous at times, but it's very comfortable and protects from the cold perfectly. He latches the cape onto his pauldrons, equips the sheath for his sword, and goes to leave for the door. But just as he's about to leave, he looks at the helmet still sitting on the armor rack. It's a typical knight's helmet, fitted to a wolf's head and even styled to look like a wolf. Every knight in the Royal Guard has one styled after their species, but nobody ever wears them. They're extremely uncomfortable and not really needed for day-to-day duties. Most knights either carry them around under their arms or just don't even bother to bring them. For a moment, Lyall considers bringing it to the ceremony, but then reconsiders knowing that he won't even be on duty. Even as captain, he'll most likely just get to hang back in the crowd and watch from the center of the room. He can't help but wonder if they planned it this way. Maybe they didn't want the one person who was closest to Luvun planted right alongside the throne. Then again, nobody has really accused Lyall of anything yet. He steps through the door and into the dim corridor. Thankfully, the throne room isn't too far from his bedchambers. He can even hear some distant chatter coming from where the throne room is. It's pretty far away, but his hearing is better than most. He starts walking down the hall with his paw relaxingly placed on the handle of his dagger. On his way, he passes a few people who are clearly making an effort to pay him no mind. Being one of the tallest people in the hallway can make it hard to blend in. It appears that most people are trying to avoid contact with him, though. He notices that when he makes eye contact with some people, they avert their eyes and continue to talk to whoever they're strolling with. He'll just have to get used to it. People will be people. More and more people clog the hall as he approaches the large doors leading into the throne room. Some of them he recognizes as nobility from the nearby cities. There are a lot of lords and traders of all different shapes and sizes. He even spots a few heads of some smaller noble houses from the west. They're wearing their crests proudly and chatting amongst themselves. There's even a small band off to the side talking with each other and tuning their instruments. Everyone is standing up against the walls and pillars, allowing the light to beam through the windows onto the floor. It shines brightly and illuminates the whole room, giving each plant growing on the wall a healthy glow. Lyall desperately tries to spot anyone in the crowd that he knows, so he's not standing around awkwardly. Suddenly he hears someone a short distance away say his name. Sir Lyall! Lyall turns around to see Kadaj standing alone, his paws behind his back. He has a thoughtful expression on his face. The charismatic attitude he carries is currently absent. Hello, Lord Kadaj. Hope things are well. As well as they can be. He looks at the ground in discomfort. I also hope that things are good with you. Given everything that's happened. Lyall would start venting about his problems right here and right now, but he decided to give the simple answer. Kadaj doesn't know him too well, so he'll try to spare him the details. Nothing's been great, but all I can do is keep moving forward. That's all any of us can do. Unfortunately for myself, I'm unable to go anywhere, being a hostage and all that. He says that last bit in a joking tone, but Lyall takes it very seriously. Well, we have to keep an open mind when it comes to these things. Surely you understand how everyone's suspicions are fairly placed. Oh, of course. It makes plenty of sense. He says this with a hint of sarcasm sprinkled with sincerity. I'm willing to be compliant for the sake of order. Lord Luvun and I have talked about this before, and he knows how passionate I am when it comes to that. He swings his paws to the front and clasps them, arms drooping down while bouncing on his heels. By the way, how is our mutual friend? I really hope that he's okay. He's as good as anyone would be in a prison cell, but last I saw him, he seemed to be taking it better than most. Luvun's strong, so I know he'll get through it. Their conversation has been lowered to a whisper as Lyall begins to speak of Luvun. He's definitely the best of us when it comes to that. Something about him has always struck me as different. He's skilled politically, but still holds strengths in other areas. What do you mean by that? Well, I don't know much about his past, but I'd assume since he's not of noble blood, there's something interesting to be said of it. Lyall wonders why Kadaj is bringing this up. It is a bit interesting. Most of what I know is that Luvun was a commoner that rose to a high position of power. Something about it being like a game to him. He never talks about it much. He doesn't seem to be someone fixated on the past. No, he doesn't. At least not his own. Yeah. Lyall looks down with a bit of sadness in his eyes. You really care for him, don't you? What? This blunt statement takes him a bit off guard. To be fair, he was spacing out a bit. Sorry, I didn't mean to pry. It's just I've been hearing people talk. Yes, well, people talk. I know, but I don't care much for that. Talking is one thing, but seeing is another. Mainly, I noticed the way you look at him. I don't mean to offend, but it's blatantly obvious. Lyall shifts uncomfortably, not liking where this chat is going. The blush on his face is as clear as day. Where is this going? Please don't take this the wrong way. I have no intention of showing any form of judgment. Where I am from, I also have someone that I care for deeply, as much as I hate to admit it. He says this last part under his breath. You'll never hear any judgment from me. I'm only here to help, and I know how much you care for him. Lyall makes a puzzled and embarrassed face. Whatever anybody thinks is up to them. I appreciate your concern, Lord Kadaj, but we don't need your sympathies. Lyall! Kadaj suddenly takes him by the arm and brings him to a secluded corner of the room, bringing his tone to a hissing whisper. I don't want to see Luvun swinging by his neck, or losing it. He loosens his grip on Lyall's arm and lowers his head. Lyall sees a look of doom appear on his expression. I'm not entirely sure you know how these things work, but this doesn't look good for him. Alright guys, I'm going to save it right there. Oh, right before the coronation, too. Ooh, next episode ought to be something special. Oh god, who's to say the first thing Adrius is going to do when he gets crowned king is order Luvun to be executed. And Lyall, for that matter. Oh lord, all kinds of bad things can go wrong, and probably will go wrong. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, ring that notification bell. Leave a super thanks if you can. It always helps. Until the next video, I love you all. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye!